Hello, everyone, and welcome to Riverside Theater's Backstage Chat, a podcast where we get to talk to some of the talented artists who work on our stages. Led by producing artistic director Alan D. Cornell and managing director John R. Moses, Riverside Theater is the only professional theater on Florida's Treasure Coast. Last time we spoke with Gail C., the director of Riverside's production of Jersey Boys, which plays January 2nd through the 28th as part of our 2023-24 season. Today, we've got the boys themselves, the actors who portray them on our stage. Trevor James, who plays Frankie Valli, Brent DeRoma, who plays Tommy DeVito, Danny McHugh, who plays Bob Gaudio, and Jason Michael Evans, who plays Nick Massey. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Jersey Boys is the show that showcases the music and the lives of the quartet, the Four Seasons. It's called Jersey Boys because these guys were from Jersey, right? And became one of the biggest recording artists of the early 60s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first 5 years, or first early years, they had 25 top 10 hits. That's an amazing task for an era where there was a lot of musical groups going on. So why do you think they were so popular? What really made them stand out from other groups?
Frankie.
No,
they had an uncanny sense of, blending with each other that I think was built, over years, especially between Nick, Frankie, and Tommy. But when Bobby comes along, the songwriting element and the unique style that they were kind of, I think, working towards for a long time just kind of made this perfect matchup, which allowed them to kind of, showcase what they already had a lot better than they had before, thanks to Bob, and Frankie's voice just sails over everything.
And that's what I was going to ask, if this group really melded well and they performed well, but Bob's song sort of took them to the next level. It was sort of, it really hit the people's ears, in essence, more than others. Bob wrote, what was his first famous song? Sherry. But didn't he write...
Oh, yes. When he was 15, he wrote Short Shorts.
Short Shorts.
We wear short shorts, yeah.
Which, growing up in the 70s, was a Nair commercial.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was only 15 when he wrote that song.
That's amazing. And
he was a child prodigy.
He continued to write for the group. And that's what really catapulted them.
And also their appeal to blue-collar America.
Yeah, absolutely.
This everyman persona that they sort of wrote about and let out, very relatable to the masses,
People from the streets.
Yeah.
Who,
the neighborhood.
That's right. He says it in the show,
Yeah.
The neighborhood. Have any of you played the role before?
Yeah, this is my second time playing Frankie Valli. Third time doing the show. And my third time doing it with Jason, who's Nick, and then second time with Brent.
Yeah, this is my fifth time playing Nick.
Really? Fabulous. And Nick is really one of the characters that is least known.
Yeah.
Only because he was with the group for only 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
He left, if I'm not mistaken, to create another group that wasn't successful.
Exactly.
And sort of came back.
Yeah.
And was with them again in the height of their success.
Yeah. He was older than everyone else. I think he had maybe 15 years on Bob, so there may have been a little bit of a disconnect there. So he left originally, he came back, and then he left again, and didn't come back. But yeah, he's sort of the enigma of the group. Like when people see Jersey Boys, they're like, oh, I know a little bit about these three people. I don't know much about that guy. Which I feel like gives me a little more creative license. And also he was the only member who had passed away when they started putting the show together, so he couldn't really give his input in that way. I mean, his family could. But yeah, he's kind of the one that people are eager to learn more about.
But when the group started hitting it big, it was the Four Seasons. And then was it Tommy, was it Bob who sort of pushed Frankie more into the spotlight?
Bobby.
Bob was so inspired by Frankie's voice when they first met that it was his songwriting combined with Frankie's voice that I think led to the sound that became the Four Seasons. And I think that Bob thought that Frankie was a single, like that it was the voice, the singular voice, that was the thing that was the draw of the group. And so Frankie, should have been a single.
And not to have you put yourself in their heads, but how do you think
We've been doing it for a week.
how do you think the other people in the act sort of felt? I mean, Tommy was with Frankie from the very beginning, and now Frankie is being pushed more and more to the forefront. Do you think Nick and Tommy might have had
That's
issues?
something you're gonna have to see.
Is that part of the show?
I think it's that part of this show, one of the biggest allures that it has is that you learn so much about what was really happening between these four guys, both good and the bad. So when it comes down to when this person left the group and how that felt, and when this person entered the group, how did that make them feel? You and this is a great show to come back and see, in the respect that you can watch any one season's whole track and see a completely different show, because each season has their respectful season in the show.
Right.
So you kind of get clued in to what's going on with them for a stretch of time, and you move on. But you could come back and see the show 4 different times and see 4 very different shows, provided you're watching any one of us. Throughout.
And let's just explain that the show is broken down into 4 seasons, since it's the 4 seasons.
Yes.
And each season has the spotlight on one of the actors.
Yeah, we all
Correct.
passed the baton.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how did the 4 seasons, as the group, become the 4 seasons? Where'd that name come from? How did the guys grow up together? And
They went through many an iteration,
Many names.
including the 4 lovers, the Varietone, the
Topics.
list,
The Romans.
topics,
The Romans.
The Andrews sisters.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on, and I think the 4 seasons was where they all ended up, especially once Bob entered the group, and it was a lot involving the blend that they had, that it was very full circle, and that's where I think it came from. There's not a whole lot of information on where the name itself.
And what I do love about the show is that it doesn't sugarcoat the lives of these guys. It's not, oh, happy, happy, joy, joy. Here's one song, here's another song. It shows the difficulties and the challenges that fame brought to each of them.
That's why it was so successful. It was so honest and such an unprecious portrayal of these guys' lives. I think relative to other bio musicals about other artists, which are great, this one kind of sets apart just because they were very willing to air the dirty laundry that you wouldn't think someone would want aired, but it makes it so human and so accessible.
And there are stories about the original creators, the writers of this show, getting calls at payphones in New Jersey that were friends with Gyp DeCarlo is an alias name that we use in the show, but they were originally using the character Gyp's real name in the show, and they were getting calls and told to go to this payphone at this cross street in New Jersey to expect a call at this time, that they may not use his real name. So just some insight on how deep these guys were really willing to go and share their story fully, without anything, without any walls up, was kind of insane.
That it became a threat to the mob ties that they had, and they had to be reeled back in.
And I've always felt that jukebox musicals such as this one, where the music already existed before the show existed, live and die with the book of the
Absolutely.
musical, the scenes tying together in between the songs. And for my money, this is the best book of any jukebox musical.
It's so
Or musical.
well written.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
such a great book.
The show
Agreed.
definitely sets the standard for all the jukebox musicals that came after it. You can kind of see how Jersey Boys has influenced their.
Or how they're trying to get away from what
Yeah.
Jersey Boys has done
Yeah,
to try
yeah.
to make their own thing, but coming
Yeah.
back to Jersey Boys, it's
Not
hard
doing
to
it
beat.
like Jersey
it's hard,
Boys.
it's hard to beat. No one does it like it's embedded now in the not just jukebox, but just the
Yeah.
overall musical theater canon. It's one of the great musicals of the American theater.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And yet, a show like this, really showcasing this amazing group, also has to showcase the iconic songs that they brought to the world. Is there a special song within the show, maybe you sing or someone else sings, that really speaks to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is my first time doing the show. I'm the odd man out of the 4 seasons. But the song "Walk Like a Man," I vividly remember a cassette tape of like the greatest hits of the 4 seasons when I was 7 or 8 years old. And there's also a film called Heart and Souls. It stars Robert Downey Jr. and Elizabeth Shue and Charles Grodin and a bunch of other people, Michael Madsen. And there's a random scene where they go into an a cappella rendition of "Walk Like a Man," and I remember seeing that, and that was, to me, that was my introduction to that music. And then the cassette tape of the greatest hits came later. But like my introduction to the entire world of Frankie Valli and the 4 Seasons was "Walk Like a Man," and so I've known that song for almost my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of songs. Every song in this show tells the story so appropriately. Like every song that happens when it happens in the script for a very specific reason to follow the book and make sense of. Even if you just listen to the underscoring. I'm sorry, I'm going in on this, but like the underscoring to a scene. If you start thinking about the lyrics of the song that's happening in the underscoring, it's supporting the scene. Like the lyrics are reflecting what's happening at all times. Like that, they went so wild with this. But I think the song that like, it's just it is Mary Ann is just one of the. It just feels so good. I wish I could be on stage when it was happening. I love that song.
That's amazing.
Every Frankie Valli, I feel like, is obligated to say, and it's true, that "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You" is a very special moment on stage. But also, I think my personal favorite song of theirs is "My Eyes Adored You," and I look forward to singing that one every night. A little bit more than the others, maybe, just because I love the scene. Again, it all comes back to the book. It's so funny. People come to see the show for the music, but the book is really what keeps you engaged. And yeah, the way the song comes out of the scene is so appropriate and so heartbreaking, and it's everything that an actor would want in a musical scene.
Yeah.
Nick?
I second Trevor, because that's one of the few songs in the show that doesn't take place during a performance.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's not diegetic.
It's his internalized feelings about his marriage, and then we all kind of chime in there at the end. And it's one of the few moments in the show where we all connect as people off stage yet on stage. You know what I mean? So like the song in and of itself is not in a performance when it's sung. It's about the actual feelings happening inside the characters' hearts, and that one has always stuck out to me too, because the 4 of them come together and they sing this little harmony that's unlike any other harmony in the show, because it's the only one we sing that doesn't take place at a performance. And that to me just kind of shows the universality of the music, that you can sing it in traditional musical form where I'm singing what I'm feeling to another person, even though it was not written for that purpose.
It's so seamless.
Yeah.
And the songs you're talking about necessarily are the ones that came in the second part of the career, because in the early 60s they were huge hits, but then at the end of 60s they sort of died down, but then there was a great resurgence in the early 70s, and that's where "My Eyes Adore You" and all the
working my
other
way
ones
back, yeah.
came. Why do you feel, does the show talk about the sort of resurgence, the repopularity of the group?
Yeah.
The show, Rick and Marshall set everything up very obviously strategically and to follow timeline, but there's a lot that kind of, it's like to justify a character's whatever moves they make in whatever scene or what, meaning like in their lives, what they went forward to do. So we don't talk about any real resurgence because for these guys, nothing changed.
Right.
For these guys, they were still dealing with their own lives and respectfully touring and like going about business the same way. What was happening in the public eye isn't necessarily what's happening with these four gentlemen, if you can call them that at some points in the show. and I think this show is very deeply invested in what was really happening, between us.
Right. And with that marriage of book and music, you get to peel back, and like you're saying about how they might have had a lull or a dip off for a sec, you see that reflected in the personal lives of these characters, and an audience will be like, oh, that makes sense why they weren't cranking out the hits that they were, because look at what they were going through as people at the time. How could they have been investing as well in their music when all this stuff was hitting the fan?
100%.
Well, even with the track record of the team up of Bob Gaudio and Bob Crew writing and producing, there was a moment of hesitation or a lack of faith in what ended up being one of the greatest solo songs that Frankie Valli had, which is "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You." They were radio stations that didn't want to give it a chance. It's like, because it was different than what was on popular radio at the time, and it kind of was its own thing. And the fact that song is just such an inherent classic, it's in the DNA of all of New Jersey. That's just a song that you always sing, and everybody sings together. Everyone sings it da 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 da.
When it's been covered,
it's
so
like,
much.
oh my gosh, oh absolutely. But the fact that was there was hesitation on that one,
Which is interesting because I personally have a connection to that song when I was in second grade. My teacher made us vogue for our parents to that song, which is very interesting. And that's probably, you were talking about Walk Like a Man. That's my introduction to the Four Seasons.
Great.
I was voguing to "Can't Take My Eyes Off."
Excellent.
That's a good idea.
I
There
think
might be something there. We haven't staged it yet.
I think I've been to 5 weddings where that was the first dance song.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Up to 2013, that was the #1 karaoke song in Japan.
Oh my gosh.
Since it went live. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, I'm so thankful for you guys taking the time and talking about the show, and I will ask for a little more time so we can talk about you guys individually. But is there anything special that you would like the audiences coming to see the show to feel or to expect?
Well, this is the first show that I've ever done where I've seen college football coaches sob in the front row.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in that respect, it is not like a normal cookie cutter fluffy. It's not Mamma Mia. It's a gritty, blue collar story about 4 guys making this work the best they can, and it's really really truly is on top of the very authentic Jersey language. And a very true story. So I think that's the biggest reason to come see it, is because you're going to get a very satisfying full story coverage of all these guys' lives.
You'll get to know them as individuals as opposed to just performers on stage.
Yes.
Yeah. And hopefully that will lead to a deeper connection in the music.
Yeah.
When you feel like you know these people a little better as people, not just from the music you've been listening to for 5 decades, but there might be an additional connection.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for this part of the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We ask everyone to listen to the next one that's coming up, and we'll talk to these guys a little more in depth. So, until next time, this is Oscar Sales.